Hi, everyone. Welcome to the third edition of our Fireside Chats. For those that don't know, we're currently in the midst of our community summer camp campaign. The main goal for this campaign is actually just for everyone to relive the happiness and fun and whatever you experienced during summer camp when you were actually going there, probably back in the day. And we decided to add a little B2B flavor to it and make it all about community so that it still is probably hopefully fun, but also very much educational about everything that it takes to actually run and build a successful community. To help me do this today, I'm actually super excited to be joined by Miss Katie Ray. Hi, Katie, welcome.
Hey,
I mainly know you from Clary, but you have now moved on to Metadata and are their new head of community. So belated congratulations. That is actually pretty epic. And being a marketer, Metadata obviously also very epic. So happy to have you here.
thanks. I'm so excited. I can't wait to share everything that I've learned from Clary and then now at Metadata and even at Sales Hacker about trying to get some level of executive buy-in. So I can't wait for that conversation.
Awesome. Same. I'm also just super excited because I finally managed to get you on a webinar. I
I
feel
know
like
it's about time.
no, I think it's taken forever. I mean, I've seen some written stuff, but no conversations yet. But we're going to change that today, so that's pretty epic. Okay, one final thing or housekeeping thing. Yes, we will be recording, and we also will be sharing. So no need to ask and or take notes. Well, obviously you can take notes if you want to, but you will also get the video afterwards. That's it. Are you ready to go?
Absolutely.
Amazing. So am I. So let's get to it. So today's fireside chat will be all about strategies to actually get the internal buy-in required, but also just set up a community project in the first place. And then eventually also about vendor choosing, vendor approval, everything that comes with figuring out what kind of vendor or what kind of community you will be building. Now, what's common in the world of community is that it's called a heavy lift. You've probably heard this before. Heavy because it's a lot of work to actually manage one, but also because it can be hard to actually pick the right platform for your community, right? There's a bunch of questions tied to that decision, like will they even join? But also, is this one of those channels that we now say our customers are actually using, and are we sure? So some guidance might be required. I thought we'd start in a different way. So I ended my last fireside chat with Mathieu from BMC, and he basically said that he looks at platforms last, like all the way at the end of what he does when he starts building a new community. So he figures out people first, so his first like pinnacle people that will join a community, but also message and like narrative sort of angle that they have in the community, and then makes the first few connections before he actually starts looking at a platform. So what did that look like for you? When did you start looking at platforms, or do you generally agree? Oh, I can't hear you right now. No, not yet. Still cannot hear you. Is it still on the AirPods maybe? Or on the microphone? Yeah, just plug it back in. It was working. No, I still can't hear you. I think you might actually have to rejoin. Just refresh. Yeah, I think you might just have to refresh the browser. There we go. We'll be right back, people. Let's see if we can get this to work. Now the mic is back on. For everyone that just joined, we're having a little audio issues on Katie's side. So we're waiting for Katie to rejoin and then we'll be back. Makes you feel human, Megan. It makes me sweat, honestly, but I guess that's human as well. Let's see if we can get her back. That would be great. I see a Katie coming back in the room. Yeah, that it does. It really does. So Katie, you might have to enable microphone and camera again.
Okay, it says it's on.
Yes. Now I can hear you.
Okay, is my camera working though?
No, you have to turn it on at the bottom.
Oh man. That's just this is today. This is a very, very big Monday.
Honestly, Sturfs is right for hosting a webinar on a Monday. There we go. You're back.
Awesome. Okay.
Megan was just saying in chat that this is actually nice because it makes everyone feel human.
Oh, thanks, Megan.
I just said it makes me feel sweaty, but honestly, that's probably a human feeling as well.
It's the worst. Okay, so back to when do I start looking at platforms? How do I kind of start going through that process, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so whenever I moved to Clary, I knew exactly what platform I wanted, and it was literally anything that wasn't Salesforce Experience Cloud. It just full transparency.
Narrows it down a little bit.
And so what I started doing was actually almost requirements gathering, trying to figure out what was it that we were currently working on, what was it that we were going to need in the future, and if we were going to scale, what would that platform need support for those issues and those efforts. And so that's kind of what we started looking at. And most importantly, my number one thing I most curious about was how much money can I spend? Yeah. And then who else was going to be a part of that budget or decision-making process? And what kind of tough for us originally is we didn't have like a procurement person. And so we didn't really know what that process actually looked like. And so our poor sales gal over at Insided, Kelly, she's amazing. I will always sing her praises. She was so patient with us because we would go through the process and be at the finish line. And then, oh, somebody else wants to see this and somebody else has questions. And so I would encourage everyone as you're starting the process, really get an understanding of who is going to be part of the conversation, questions would want to see, and even make a list of people who you wouldn't be a part of it. Because there were some folks that had no business being in the calls with us because it didn't matter to them what we chose. Yeah. So that's kind of like initial.
Yeah, which is a good bridge. So let's pick that apart a little. So if you look at selling a community platform from an internal standpoint, how did you go about this? I mean, I think there's probably still, unfortunately, a lot of departments or even leaders in SaaS companies that are like, community, do we really need to? Is it something that we actually will see yield something towards a business goal or whatever? So how did you sell this? What was the package that you gave them?
Yeah, we had a lot of folks that we had to sell to. And I came in at Clary at a really interesting time because our support team had just purchased Salesforce Experience Cloud, and they were calling their support portal community. And it was like day 3, and I created a vocabulary document. In every meeting I was on with them, I was like, just to confirm, the support portal is not the community. It's a place for people to tickets. And so I was not making friends from the very beginning. They were very upset with me. But it worked out really well. And so whenever I was going through an internal roadshow of trying to figure out who do I need to sell the most to, I actually created a list. Like I said from the very beginning, of getting a list of who I need to get buy-in from, but then figuring what was important to them. And a lot of people know, like, I come from a sales background. And so I look at who is my buyer in this and who target persona that I need the green light from. And so that's kind of how I ran the internal roadshow, was if I needed to talk with the VP of success or pro services or whoever, I looked at what was important to them. I gave them an opportunity to ask questions, and I tried to be as well versed on the neighbor community as possible. Now, luckily, I was very fortunate where a lot of folks really like the idea of community, but then later on they were like, oh, this is a lot more work than we probably expected. And so
As
that was like
always.
a whole other buy-in process.
Yeah, as always. So did you actually also get any feedback from customers, for example, that they were asking for one, or at least for different ways of connecting to the business?
Yeah, we did get some feedback from customers. A lot of people, and I actually called them like my community founders for our beta. They were really excited about it. They were really hopeful. They wanted a space where they could come and connect with peers. They wanted to learn how could they do what they're doing better. How are people doing it? And that's actually something that like I'm dealing with at Metadata right now, which is really cool. Of people are having conversations right now and just excited to brainstorm with peers, which is a really exciting thing. And so I was able to take that as almost social proof and bring it along. And here are people from key accounts for us that are so excited about this. And that's why I think people were, I don't know, more on board about that. So
Yeah, exactly. I think it's especially also on metadata side, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because I mean, if you only look at their LinkedIn messaging and everyone also from the company being super crazy about sharing data and challenging common concepts within marketing, I think a community player could play a huge role into that.
yeah, it's been really exciting. Actually, we need to get you in that community.
Maybe.
But it's been so fun because people, I mean, we just launched the beta for that Thursday, I think. And I mean, we almost have 200 members in there right now. And it's been invite only so far, which is kind of crazy because the invite list was only 130. And so now I'm like, how are we at this number? Who's coming in?
Little off topic, but is that also a strategy to keep it invite only in the beginning? Because I can imagine it also makes people feel special in a way.
Yeah. Well, and what's kind of cool, almost going back to your question about like getting feedback, is with metadata, we are truly making this for members by members. And so in our launch party, we actually did a survey on our community values and are getting our members feedbacks on which values are most important to them and like creating that culture from those values. And then whenever we go through platform evaluation, we're going to be setting up a vendors and doing like mini demos and having our members part of that, which is actually kind of cool.
That is very cool.
It's really cool, yeah, because
it's very difficult for the vendor.
It's so different. It's a little scary because there's things that I want that they may not want as much or may not appreciate as much as I would, and so it's a little scary on that respect. But it's kind of exciting though as well, the vendors that are going to participate, because it's community for marketers who are building communities. And so it's great business opportunity for them to kind of get a firsthand, hey, here's a high level demo, and then people are going to be calling them for business after, which is pretty cool. So
I mean, I envisioned only talking about the platform at the end of the webinar, but this is very interesting. So when you actually have your community members on, for example, a demo with a vendor, how are you going to instruct them what to pay attention to? Or do you just want them to go in blank and give you feedback like, hey, I like this. The guy presenting's hair was amazing too. I can see myself using this. Those kinds of things? Or are you actually going to instruct them to focus on certain areas?
Yeah, I think we're going to do like a battle of the brands type of thing. And have like 4 categories that they're all competing in. Because let's face it, a lot of platforms have very vast similarities, but there's certain intricacies and random things that make a huge difference. Like for me, I love Inside It because I love the reporting. I love my Salesforce reporting. I love being to say, if a member or if a customer is engaged within the community within 4, they're 70% more likely to expand with us.
Yeah.
Like those numbers I love. So that's why
Powerful
I'm
numbers.
excited. Yeah, those are great numbers.
Yeah, but also just I like those very practical cases where you're going to be able to tie community to the like top business goals, because everyone's going to report on either retention, expansion, adoption, those kinds of things. So if you can just neatly tie your community to 1 or 2 or 3 of those goals, that helps so much.
Absolutely. So we'll have our categories that they'll kind of go through. You know, we're still kind of fleshing it out, but that's where it's kind of cool in with buy-in. If I can go to my CEO Gil and say, hey, we went through this process with our members. Here's 300 people that fit within VP of marketing, CMOs, head of demand gen, whatever. They value this the most. Here's a good, better, best. And this is where it kind of sits. Then I feel like I'm able to ask for more money if I need to, or get the green light where I need it.
Honestly, very smart. I have not heard this before. Also, especially just leveraging those 200 members by getting them on a demo to then get more money. Very savvy. I like that. So as we're on the topic of money already, so how would you quantify the costs and maybe also resources required to actually get one and then build one? Is this a business case that you have to build, or?
Yeah. So this was something whenever we were kind of forced to look at Salesforce Experience Cloud. I had gone to CMX and the community club and asked for feedback. What should I expect? What questions should I ask? And the number one thing I got was, you're going to be paying so much more, if not the same amount for the platform as you would on consulting to actually get things built up. So whenever I had first started at Clary, I threw out, I need about like 150,000 for the year. That's it. That's going to include the platform. It's going to include swag. That's going to include development work if I need it. If I need to hire somebody, that's probably like a good estimate for year one. Yeah. And she said, cut that in half. And I was like, okay. It's just like, you're sharing your budget with education and LMS. And so that was something we had kind of looked at as well, was, well, there's a platform that serves community as well as like certifications or education side of it, which it's fairly hard to find. And so I would recommend just go and talk with companies. Everyone keeps their prices so close to their chest, so you're never going to find it online. And that's, it is what it is. But I did really enjoy just chatting with companies, and I had sat down with 5 or 6 companies and then narrowed it 3 whenever we were going through that process. And I said, well, here's our price range. And I like to break things up into a good, better, best. And I had to keep Salesforce in there because of some internal stuff. And so, but that was like a good option, but it's not great. And then I had Insided as our better because Core was our best, because that's $130,000 a year. It's crazy. It's an amazing platform. It does everything, but it wasn't suitable for where we were at. So it didn't make sense. I don't have a team of 15 people to run this. So it didn't make sense to do that.
No. So if you go for like a good, better, best approach, how do you then decide which one is going to have your focus when you're selling this internally?
I know this may not be the best way to make sense of this, but having been in sales, I have seen companies where if their sales teams are not awesome, your customer success and support is not going to be awesome as well, because sales teams are the first people your customers and prospects are interacting with. And if it's not a great experience, it's not going to be a great experience long term. If they truly don't have that relationship or partnership, it's not going to be great. And so while it's hard to quantify that, that was something for me of this. If I feel comfortable, confident that it's going to be a relationship and partnership term, ultimately, no matter what, that would trump everything for me. Because if we have that relationship, then they're going to develop the stuff that we need them to develop with. And if they see us as a valuable partner, and if we're spending the right amount of money, then things will happen. And that's just kind of how it works sometimes. And so that was something that kind of sat as like an overarching, is that a relationship there? And if not, then they're probably going to be the best partners for us.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. I was talking about this, I think, on a customer success conference a couple of months ago, where we also said, like, yeah, sales is the first contact, and that creates expectations. And even if the first expectation from sales is a very bad one or a very great one, that then puts the same expectation on the team that comes after. So I actually think that's a logical way to approach it. It's probably a good way. Maybe the final thing on money. I'm a marketer. I talk too much about money anyway. So the final thing on money, you said in the beginning that you would sometimes just be able to ask for more money. So that means that as you are going through this process, or at least this is what I'm assuming, money can change. So how have you dealt with that during the process? Did it only go up, which is probably best case, or do you have to deal with internal factors to sort of retain the budget that you've planned for this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And it's very difficult sometimes if you've never really been in a spot where you have to make financial decisions or have to present for it. And I think where I was struggling at the very beginning was I didn't know how to ask. I didn't know how much was too much to ask for. And I've learned that there's no such thing.
Yeah.
It's much better to be like, I would like $500,000, and they say, we'll give you 3, and you're like, holy shit,
okay.
This is amazing. Like, I'd much rather have that. And so that's always something I recommend. I'm like, it may seem crazy, but if you can kind of justify the number, you should be okay. But I also work really, really hard to build the relationship with my management that, like, I'm not going to take advantage of it, and I'll bring data into it. Hey, here's 5 companies I've spoken with. Here's the average price for everything. But then I also like to play towards, and this is like a salesy thing, I want to play towards what that person's ultimate goal is. So if your goal is to really scale your business, and if it really is to bring in, 10x NRR and ARR, whatever, then this is the platform that you need, because it can support in ABC. And if I can line that and they see that relationship and the support it will provide, then they're usually more likely to give you more money. I feel like.
So that's like it can support future growth argument.
Yep. And what I've seen is whenever money gets taken away, it's usually because you probably, pardon my language, but you probably fucked up somewhere. You probably did something you were not supposed to do. You spent money without providing support as to why you should do it, or there were things out of your control, like a recession where things just get cut, and that is what it is. But I feel like with platforms, there's so many use cases. And back to the relationship, if you're partnering with someone that really gets it and really understands what you're trying to accomplish, they're going to be giving you resources and even talk tracks sometimes on how do you ask for this, or how do you reposition something, because ultimately you're trying to make a sale with your management. And that's like something, no offense to marketers or other customer education people where your community might be, it may not be your strong suit.
Maybe. So what you're saying is that your management trusts you with money.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Good. I just got my budget, so I was just shocked.
I would say that is an achievement. Well done. Since you brought up the R word or the recession word, do you think community is actually a good purchase during times of, well, let's call it at least economic uncertainty that we're facing right now? Does it help?
So I have kind of an interesting perspective on the recession and all of this in general, because at the end of the day, business still has to go on, and you still have to have customers confident in you. You still have to have customers that are getting their questions answered in a timely manner, regardless on if you're cutting 1,000 people or 2 people. You still have to be there. And I think especially right now, if you have a customer community, it would actually be less expensive than onboarding people on your CS team into your support team, because your community, customer community, could really be supporting level 1 and level 2 questions that come in a more timely and efficient manner. So I think that end, I absolutely think so. With what we're metadata, creating an industry geared community, I absolutely think it's important, because everyone needs a safe space to come to. Everyone needs a community to brainstorm, stay on top of trends, all of that. And especially right now, you got to get creative, and you have to figure out how to serve your customers and prospects better. And a community is a great place for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the perfect answer. I have no additions.
Well, good.
Amazing. I'll shut up about the money part. So let's finally, because we have 10-ish minutes left. So let's finally talk about platforms. So can you give us like a general account of your approach when you first start selecting vendors? So you mentioned you already have a few in mind. Do you just add a few by doing some research? And also, how do you do your research, or what do you look at?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the most helpful assets out there is from Brian and Erica's podcast, And Before the Lock. They've got an amazing Google sheet, and it's all for the evaluation process. Some of it was too deep for me. I was like, this is so much stuff. I can't deal with all of it. And so I actually kind of reduced it and created my own based off of it. And right now, as we're kind of starting to look at some platforms, and having launched a platform already, know like what's most important for what I can't live without. That's like messages, analytics, badges, all of that. So once you've created a list of your tabs, if you don't have one, check out that. It's amazing. Once you go through that and you kind of have an idea of how much money you are allowed to spend, side note, I would always add like 10 or 20,000 to it, because in the grand scheme of business, like that's pennies for businesses. And so, you may be able to kind of work some things out there with that. So always just add like just a little bit more to it. But once we go through that and we go through who has to be a part of the process, we start going through conversations. I would say get whoever is on the technical side of implementation on your team on those calls as soon as possible. That's the one thing we didn't do. We really screwed up with that, because we had stuff from like Salesforce implementation or SSO stuff where I didn't get those people involved soon enough. And we had problems with turning stuff on purely because they didn't get to have a conversation to understand how it worked. And so that was where it was a little difficult. So get those folks on those calls early, and take their feedback with a grain of salt, I would say, as well, because some of the more technical folks don't quite appreciate community as much or necessarily see the value of it. Yeah. And so, yeah, you can get some pushbacks and they'll be like, oh, well, we like this. But I'm like, but you're not running it on here. It has less analytics, it has less functionality. Like, is that really the best choice? And you may have to be prepared to kind of fight that internally. Yeah.
Just need you to comment on SSO, please, and only SSO.
Yeah.
That's what I tell them, at least.
It's a good thing to say. Yeah.
No, I can fully understand. It's also difficult because obviously with every software, especially a technical person, is going to have a lot of opinions about everything about it, honestly. So which is
Mhm.
very useful also, but sometimes can also be a long list that you then have to go through and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, make sure that you understand your team's biases before going to the call. So
Yeah.
we had a lot of ex-Salesforce people at Clary, and they were very gung-ho about Salesforce. And so that was an obstacle. And I had even told Kelly inside it, I said, here's what we're up against. I don't want this platform. I don't think it's great. I think we're going to spend a lot of money and people are not going to be happy with it. And so, like, whatever you have that's against Salesforce Experience Cloud,
Send it
put
over.
that out there. But I knew that that was something I was up against, especially since the support team had already implemented it. And so the Salesforce clause were already inside the org. And so I was having to kind of fight against those a lot of the time. So figuring out, especially with the technical folks, if there are certain types of code that they're more comfortable with, like tell your salesperson this if it's the platform you want. So that way they're prepared for that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this is also, you partly already answered my next question. I was going to ask you, like, how do you determine a fit between your business and the platform? But I guess like technical prowess, previous experience, but also who's going to be using the platform. Does that play a role?
Absolutely, 100%. And that's something I was just talking with some folks last week about was, do you keep a community on Slack? Do you put it on Facebook? Or like arms against putting on Facebook because that's a personal platform versus like a work
Yeah.
platform. And so having that conversation has been so pivotal with really choosing what platform you're going to go with. Um, and choosing what other assets or resources are actually going to be on that platform are going to be very, very important in that conversation for sure.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of companies actually now decide to start with like a Slack community, for example, to just have like a low barrier of entry, I guess, to engagement, chat-like experience, those kinds of things. Did you consider Slack, or did you just go for the bigger platforms first?
So at Clary, we actually had a Slack community. We had an awesome gal in marketing. She had great intentions, and she just kind of wanted to take it on as a little side project and just didn't have enough time and resources to really help it flourish. And so whenever I joined and I was like scoping through all the channels, it was all marketing. So no offense again to marketing, but you can't spam it. I mean, that's the thing. It was every single channel was, oh, here's an event, here's this, here's that. But there was
Yeah.
no conversation, there was no dialogue. So it was almost like a very dense audience, truly a captive audience at that point. And so we started ours at Metadata with Slack, and I love being able to set it up super easy, super fast. But once again, it's probably not our permanent home because there's a lot of functionality, analytics, stuff like that, where it's just not as beefy as I need it to be. Um, so there is value, but I think it's more of like a proof of concept situation.
Yeah. Okay. Clear. Okay. Maybe this is going to be the final question already. Time goes fast. So can you describe the home stretch? Like you have your sights set. I was going to say your eyes set, but sights is fine too. Your sights set on a platform that you want. You've basically completed your business case. This is what's going to look like. This is what onboarding is. So what's the final stretch like? Who did you need to convince? Where did you need to present?
Yeah, absolutely. The final stretch, you need to get legal, security, all those teams involved with it. That was something, once again, we didn't have a procurement officer, so we didn't know what the process was. So we got to the very end. I think the contract had already been sent, and someone from HR was like, oh, you need to run through the tool called like vendor and see if you can get a price. And I actually sat down with my manager and I said, is $5,000 off really worth it? Because right now we have a great relationship. We already have a great price. We're really happy with it. Everyone has given a great rate. Are we going through this process because that's what we're told to do, or like, do I actually have to follow through with that? Because it's not worth it to me. And I actually felt like a little icky about it because I like created such a good relationship with Kelly and the team, and it's like, is 5,000 really worth it? Is that really what we're gonna fight about? And luckily they supported me. We could check that box and kept going.
Yeah.
Which I'm so thankful about, because I was like, it's so ridiculous. I mean, and so you go through Google, they look at the documents, you go through security, sure that the platform you're evaluating has the right compliance certifications and whatever that they need. One thing I would recommend that we didn't do until already implemented was talking with our GDPR expert. We knew you all were good at it. It just wasn't on our list. And I hadn't ever implemented something before, so I didn't know to check. I thought we had done security and legal. It was all fine. And then our head of GDPR was like, hey, you say you bought this platform and implemented it, so make sure you talk with them ahead of it. I was like, well, too late.
Platform. Does it deal with any people data? Oh, it does. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, so that's what that does. And I was honestly, we had gone through so much, and it was such a headache on our side internally, and I felt so bad because I would talk with Kelly every day. I'm like, I know you need a Salesforce update. I know your boss is asking for an update. I don't have anything right now. And I felt so bad. But whenever we got to that GDPR hump, I was like, no takesies, backsies. It is purchased. We have signed. But yeah, so making sure, and I would just double and triple check. I mean, not just talk with your manager, talk to their boss, talk to your procurement officer. If you have one of them, bring them into the conversation at the very beginning. You can even set up weekly check-ins with them, and that'll make it so much smoother. As always, if it's end of the month or the end of the quarter, try and leverage that for a better deal. I just got a new car this weekend, and I went in and I was like, hey, I know it's the end of the month. I'm graduating next weekend.
Have you met your target yet?
Yeah. I was like, I know you need this more than I need this. And it was awesome. And we got a great deal, which is awesome. But
I love it.
But
it is very good advice.
Yeah. And everyone knows. And I think people will kind of respect you a little more if you're like, look, let's have this real conversation. But seriously, get the right people in early, double check with them, and say, hey, this is when we're going to have this decision made. Is this timeline going to work for you? If not, can you make it work for you? And really have those conversations. Make sure you have a document of your requirements that you kind of keep track. And that's what I ended up doing whenever I had to get like final last minute buy-ins. I was like, here's all the research, here's everything. And made it nice and pretty. I had even like a presentation for people. It can be a very difficult process, but if you front load and get as many people in early, it's usually a lot easier at the end.
Yeah. Everyone's aware, and that helps.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't have GDPR saying you can't send any emails until we have this figured out.
That's a yikes. GDPR officers, we need to make sure that they stay friendly. Agreed. Awesome. Honestly, I think this, in such a short time period, was an excessive amount of knowledge shared. So thank you so much for agreeing to participate and then showing up like this in the webinar. This is amazing. We're already at time, so it's already like saying bye and everything else. We are part of the end of the webinar. So thank you so much, Katie. I have learned a lot, made a lot of notes as well, that I'll happily share with you after if you'd like. And also thanks everyone else for showing up. This was the second to last webinar of the Community Summer Camp. The next one is affectionately named Camping with Remco, which my idea, I do want to stress. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's about how to fortify your business in times of economic uncertainty. So definitely be back for that one. But for now, please enjoy the recording of this session, because I think there was a lot to process. And Katie, thank you again. I love it.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Have a great one.
Amazing. Have a great day.